floating naked in the middle of the sea, feeling the ripples of water against my skin. And I look out into the horizon, and I have never felt freer. Welcome back to the Naked Woman podcast. I am your host, Gemma Louise Finch, and in this episode, I share the story of my first time swimming naked and how it showed me what true freedom truly feels like. So let's jump back into the story of getting naked. So there I am, sitting naked on the beach, still very much in shock that I'm actually naked. I have this urge to go swimming. Now, I know that I could just put my bikini on and it would save me a lot of stress. But there was this little voice that said, do it naked. And even though I tried to ignore this voice was very persistent and very loud, and I could not. Yet at the time, the idea of walking naked down to the sea terrified me, because there's one thing to be naked sitting on a towel. It's a completely different thing to then get up and actually walk. And I can remember being so aware of the thoughts that were coming through my mind, and the thoughts were around how people will actually then see me. They will see my naked body and they will look and they will judge, and that is something that I cannot meet. This really felt like an edge that I was just like, I don't think I can actually meet. And what was really interesting at the time is that I was reading a book around how our minds actually create evidence to show us how our thoughts are actually right. And so as I was looking around, I remember telling myself that, that person's looking and she's definitely looking and he'll definitely look and he's wearing sunglasses, so he'll definitely be looking. I remember thinking, well, is that true? Because you don't know what that random stranger that you have never met or spoken to is actually thinking. And you are becoming very concerned about what other people are going to be thinking about your naked body, when in fact, you're actually on a nudist beach and everybody else is naked. So why would people care if you're naked? And even though I could hear those thoughts coming through and I could feel myself questioning all my beliefs, all my thoughts around people will be watching, I still could not get up and walk naked to the sea. I even tried the 3, 2, 1, go. It didn't work. But then I remember having this thought, and it was, well, people will actually only see your behind on the way down to the beach. And I don't know why, but for some reason I was like, I can get behind that thought. That thought was something that I can deal with. And so giving myself the prep talk of the 3, 2, 1, on the go, we got up and we walked very, very quickly down to the sea. And I will say, I was not expecting the feelings and what I was to experience next. I really want to take some time to delve further into this. So I'm actually going to go into a little bit more detail in another episode on this part of the story in particular. But I will say that the feeling of walking naked into that sea was a feeling that I will never forget, of pure bliss. To feel the sensations from the water against my naked body was something that I remember thinking to myself, how is it that I am 31 years old and I have never experienced this? It was so beautiful. And I remember just thinking how beautiful this moment was. And as I always do when I go into the sea, I love to go as far out as I can away from everybody else. And so I started to swim as far out as I could get. And I remember I got to this point and I was just floating, looking down at my naked body in utter disbelief that I'm actually swimming naked in the sea, and how I was feeling so much bliss and happiness and joy in this moment. And I remembered looking up into the horizon and seeing the blue skies and the sun beaming down on me and the beautiful cliffs that surround the Studland beach. And I was hit with this feeling of freedom that I had never ever experienced before. And in that moment, it truly changed how I perceived what freedom means to me. Because I think up until that point, I had always associated freedom with doing things the way I wanted, or having been able to have things, that I wanted. And I realized in that moment that freedom, true freedom that I was feeling, had nothing to do with what I was doing or what I had. In fact, it had everything to do with who I was being in that moment. And the freedom to choose a different story, the freedom to choose a different narrative, the freedom to feel the fear and to still do it anyway. And it really hit me that actually freedom is a choice. It's a choice that we make when we decide to take away the shackles that we ourselves had actually created. We just didn't know we had. And that freedom to meet yourself with courage and to push past that edge, and then to feel the feelings that you didn't think were ever possible. So I start to get a little chilly, and I decide to make my way back to my towel. And as my feet hit the sand, I became aware of the sensation of the water levels getting lower and lower and lower, until the point where the waters were just above my boobs, that I had this dawning realization. And it was that whilst people would see me from behind on the way to the sea, people will now see me full frontal on the way out. And that was a thought that I had not contemplated. I was frozen in sheer terror at this thought, because this thought was not a thought that I was okay with. And I remember in that moment cursing myself, cursing my naivety, questioning how could I have not thought this through. And I'll be very honest, the thought of what I will just stay in the sea until there is not a single soul left on this beach came through. Unfortunately, I realized that thought wasn't possible when I realized it was 10:30 in the morning and that you realistically can't stay in the sea till 9 o'clock at night. And so I was hit with the realization that I will, in fact, now have to be walking out of the sea fully naked. And I remember thinking, how? How can I do this? Because in that moment, it truly felt like I could not move. I felt rooted in absolute fear to the spot. And then I remembered this saying that I had heard, and it was not what you do, it's how you do it that matters. And I realized in that moment that what I was going to have to do was inevitable. I was going to have to walk out of this sea naked. But how I do it is a choice that I get to make. I can choose to walk out of this beach feeling anger and annoyance at myself that I hadn't thought the plan through properly, feeling insecure and judgmental around my body, and worrying about other people's perception of my body. Or I had a choice to meet myself exactly where I am in that moment and have the courage to meet myself in that fear to choose to meet myself with compassion, to choose to meet myself with unconditional love, and choose to meet myself with self-acceptance. Because I realized this wasn't about me trying to feel confident and feel positive around my body, because I wasn't feeling confident that I could walk out of the sea. I wasn't feeling positive around my body, but I still had a choice, and that choice could be rooted in compassion. That choice could be rooted in unconditional love for myself. And that choice could be rooted in self acceptance for what is in this moment, and to choose the courage to move past this fear and to do it anyway. And so that's what I chose. I walked out of that sea, not feeling confident, not feeling positive, but with this inner knowing that I get to choose how I respond. And I really think that has been one of the biggest gifts for me, because I realized in that moment that nothing outside of me has the ability to control me. But I have to make that choice. I have to choose that. And as I've said before, the beautiful gift of this beach is that now I have evidence that I can. And I got back to my towel, and I just remember falling to my knees and laughing with the biggest smile on my face, because, oh my, had I felt every single emotion in the space of what felt like 5 minutes. And I remember thinking, well played, universe. Well played. There is so much here that I really want to reflect on, because for me, this part of the story has given me one of the biggest takeaways. And one of the first reflections that I want to speak on is the realization that there is always an opportunity to do something that you have never done before. I had never swam naked before that moment. I know I've certainly, as I've got older, lost sight of that excitement and anticipation of what life can bring me, thinking that there's nothing new to experience. And this story just shows me, oh, there is so much more to experience when I am willing to meet myself at the edges. Because if you had said to me, Gemma, do you want to swim naked in the sea? I would have said no. I have no desire to swim naked in the sea, thank you very much. Yet there I was, feeling feelings that I didn't think I could even feel, and asking myself, why had I never felt this before? Another reflection that I really want to share is, that moment of when we build ourselves up to do something, and how actually do we make that the hardest part? Those moments that I spent trying to build myself up and trying to get myself ready. And I realized how in that moment I actually made my life so much harder, because I was trying to feel ready. I was trying to be prepared. And I realized actually sometimes in life that we will never feel ready and we will never feel prepared. And maybe that's not what life is asking for us in that moment. Maybe life is asking for us in those moments to say, I don't feel ready. I don't feel prepared, but I'm going to do it anyway. And it really made me reflect, how often do I still actually put off doing the things that I want to do because I don't feel ready? And how often in life do I feel stuck because I am waiting for something to happen, so therefore I can say I'm ready? And this part of this story has shown me that it's the willing to accept that you're not, and to still do it anyway. And interestingly, when I was preparing for this episode, a memory came up, and it was a memory of me back when I must have been 13, 14, and it was a memory of me jumping off some cliffs when I was in a summer holiday camp with the cadets. I remember being asked, "Who wants to go first?" And I jumped at the chance and I said, "Me." And I can remember climbing up this cliff, and I got to the top, and something inside of me that just said, "Do it. Don't think, do it." And I just walked up to the edge and I jumped. No hesitation. And I thought, when have I lost that? When did I lose that fearlessness? When did I lose that knowing to just jump because you'll be okay no matter what? And I think this story has just brought that back. And I'm so grateful for this story because it's just reminded me that actually I never lost it. I just forgot I had it. So I ask you, how many moments in your life have you felt stuck in pause, hesitating at the water's edge, waiting for permission, waiting to feel ready, instead of just stepping in? Thank you for joining me on this episode of The Naked Woman. If this story has resonated with you, I would love to hear. You can share with me on Instagram at The Naked Woman Podcast or message me directly. And if you've loved this episode, please give it a like or subscribe. Join me next time where we continue the story of getting naked here on the Naked Woman Podcast.